Welcome to Keep It Electric with Tremayne Person, episode 51. This episode is being recorded on Friday, September 6th. If you're new to the podcast, welcome aboard. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Keep It Electric for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and much more. And to those of you joining us from Instagram, a big thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that follow button, leave a rating, hopefully a positive one, drop a review, still hopefully a positive one, and your support truly does make a difference. As we dive into this episode, the Mariners are facing a challenging stretch, with many teams on the brink of losing viewership to the NFL as football season kicks off. I, myself included, I'm definitely planning to juggle multiple screens during this time. Over the past couple of years, I've been lucky enough to stay focused on meaningful Mariners baseball during week one of football. While this season brings a bit, this season is, I'll admit, I still have some giddy optimism and lingering uncertainty with the Mariners. It's clear the Mariners are still fighting. They're still trying to stay in the mix as the season wraps up. Let's dive into the latest developments and what's happening over the past few days. Recently, the Mariners made an intriguing move. They signed a pitcher named Jesse Hahn, sending him directly to their AAA affiliate in Tacoma. This signing caught my attention, especially because I've actually followed Hahn's career throughout social media over the years. Interestingly enough, him and I are close in age. He attended Virginia Tech. Moreover, he is actually married to someone I went to high school with. It's kept me rooting for his success, so seeing him become a Mariner or joining the Mariners organization was super interesting to see. Hahn last pitched in the major leagues in 2021 for the Kansas City Royals. He had a commendable performance in 2020. He was really great. I think he had 18 appearances. ERA was like .52, a few saves. He showed promise going to the next season, but he had some setbacks due to a shoulder injury. That following season in 2021, it cut his season short, and then he ended up being let go out of the organization. Or I actually believe he opted for free agency. He worked to recover from those lingering injuries. He signed a minor league contract with the Dodgers in 2024, and then he was released this past August when we picked him up. That's where we picked him up. Now he's 35, continuing to pursue his Major League Baseball career. It's probably a long shot to see him don a Mariners uniform in the near future, but it's admirable to witness him plugging away and competing. With his experience, it's possible he could contribute significantly for the Rainiers down the road. I'm not really sure what the plan is with him as he works to improve himself in the minors. I might just look forward to going down and catching him in Tacoma. Now let's talk about Jerry Dipoto. All right, so the whispers around Jerry Dipoto is he's returning for the 2025 season as the president of baseball operations. Those whispers have stirred up quite a bit of a controversy among us Mariners fans. So let's be real. This isn't exactly the news that sent everyone into a celebratory frenzy. My feelings on this are a mixed bag. So sure, Dipoto has proven to be a savvy businessman, consistently demonstrating to ownership that the Mariners can be a profitable franchise. But let's be real, folks. Frankly, as fans, we couldn't care less about the bottom line when it comes to the cost of cheap contracts and filling the lineup with mediocre talent. We've all seen the struggles in finding solid hitters. And then there's J-Rod and Cal Raleigh, who on the latter really deserve some flowers. Both of those guys have shown glimpses of promise when it comes to the franchise producing homegrown talent, and that's the key. I think we should run with that. So let's not kid ourselves. Expecting next year to be the year we finally break through is wishful thinking at best. It's tempting to believe that our farm system might bear fruit. The truth is that history hasn't been kind to us either. But on the other hand, and on the other end, when we manage to bring in a big bat, it often flops right here in Seattle. So maybe it's time we double down on developing our young talents. And I think that's where Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander and that part of the front office, I think that's what they do best. So instead of stacking up the pieces to acquire a big bat, maybe we double down on the pieces we already have. So yes, the pitching staff will get pricier over the next few seasons, but with contract control over promising names like Cole Young, Harry Ford, Ben Williamson, Michael Arroyo, Tyler Locklear, Lazaro Montez, Felton Celestin. Yes, the list really goes on and on here. Like, there's reason for cautious optimism. And I say these things knowing that, like, I don't dive deep into our farm development on this show, but I think there's a time and a place for that. This feels like a good time to mention it ever so slightly, but we can dive into this some more during the off season. At times, we might be delusioned that our current Major League roster, the way it sits right now, the way that's constructed, I think we as a fan base are delusioned that that's a winning roster. We must acknowledge that if the Mariners commit to this development path, we could actually be fostering something a lot more special down the line. So let's face it, if this is the trajectory that the front office chooses, and that's the direction they plan on going in, we're likely looking at a similar landscape that we're currently looking at right now in this moment when you talk in terms of playoff contention until 2027 or 2028. I think that's just the realistic part of it. And I understand that that is a grim thought, especially considering that key players like J.P. Crawford, Luis Castillo, and Logan Gilbert, they might not be on the roster at that point. But the potential for a core like what the Astros had, minus the scandal, of course, the potential for a core like that could be on the horizon for a team like Seattle. A lineup filled with up-and-coming serious talent, complemented by prime leadership in Julio and Cal, that could change the narrative for this entire thing. But only, and that's only, if ownership has the guts to invest in that. And I think that's what it comes down to. So as we move forward with these changes in the front office, and what I mean by changes, I mean like the Scott Service thing, it's clear that they're steadfast in their approach, opting to make the change in management by letting Scott Service go. The dynamic between Service and Dipoto may have become too strained to salvage, paving the way for fresh perspectives under the new management. That's Dan Wilson. Here's the kicker. While Dipoto might be a mastermind in financial maneuvering, he is aloof, and he has a tendency to antagonize the staff, the organizational chart. Yes, that's like the organizational chart. I feel like that's a corporate term for Jerry Dipoto, but he antagonizes that staff, and his lack of care to me is troubling. It feels like he's playing a game of profits at the expense of creating a winning culture, and that is really the problem that we're looking at right now with the Seattle Mariners. As fans, it's a tough reality. We're cheering for a franchise more interested in winning at a bargain. That isn't how the game works, and we know this, which makes it really hard to put up with. But when the Mariners finally do catch fire, and they will, make no mistake, they're going to catch fire, it will be a moment to savor. But until that moment, until the front office is out of the way and a new vision is embraced, get comfortable. Because we may be in for a long wait. They're serving up cheap meals and hoping for a banquet of success. That's just the reality that we're all dealing with as fans right now. I do think the front office is trying to establish a model of consistency, but the way that they're going about it, it doesn't really feel right. So again, mixed bags of feelings about it. I think we're still moving in the right direction, but still unclear of the ceiling with this front office the way that it is. With that, let's take a quick transition into the current standing situation with the Mariners. Okay, so yes, I said we're transitioning into the current standings with the Mariners, and what I'm getting ready to say next makes it seem like we're not, but we are. Just hold tight. Look at the Cincinnati Reds, okay? The Cincinnati Reds are just doing the Lord's work, all right? They recently delivered a significant boost to the Mariners' postseason hopes. They swept the Houston Astros in a 3-game set. In the final game of that sweep, former Mariners first baseman Ty France contributed the only run for the Reds with a solo home run in the 7th inning. That helped complete the sweep. It's always fun and interesting to see a former Mariner have an impact that goes in the way of the Seattle Mariners. So thank you, Cincinnati Reds. During this Reds and Astros series, many Mariners fans, they probably shifted their focus to football after the A's managed their second consecutive walk-off win, and the Mariners experienced their 4th straight walk-off loss. However, the Mariners really did make a strong comeback, all right? So they won that 3rd game 16-3 and then 6-4 yesterday to split the series at 2 games apiece. They now head to St. Louis for a weekend series against the Cardinals. So that leaves the Mariners 4.5 games back behind the Astros. It keeps them within striking distance. Ideally, they need to be within 3 games of Houston when they face off in the final week of the season. Now, sweeping the Astros, I do see that as a challenging feat. It remains a critical goal for the Mariners if they hope to secure a playoff spot. The Cardinals, with a record of 71-69, they're 5 games out of the wild card spot. They face a tough road, especially with the Brewers holding a commanding lead in their division. The Brewers are up 10 games over Cincinnati. Like, their postseason hopes are all but gone. They struggle offensively, and their pitching is even worse, so they're super vulnerable. This is the perfect time for Seattle to strike right now. 4.5 games back. They could make up another game in this set, hopefully, on the Astros. And I say that because the Astros are taking on the Diamondbacks, who are 79-62. They're fighting for a playoff spot of their own, and really, like, this weekend is bigger for them. The Mariners have a prime opportunity to gain ground. The Astros have a relatively easier schedule after the Diamondbacks here following this weekend, so it's crucial for the Mariners to capitalize on this chance before facing the Rangers, the Padres, and then the Yankees after that. Now, one thing I find super interesting, and I'll admit it because I'm just as guilty of this too, is how often we overlook those electrifying games where the Mariners' offense absolutely erupts. For instance, this past Wednesday, when they put up 16 runs. At the same time, Luis Urias, who I definitely threw a little bit of shade at, I mentioned him in my last episode. He had a standout performance in that game. Sure, the offense has been a bit inconsistent, but explosive games like this, they kind of hint at the potential that was always there. It's a glimpse of what we can expect when everything clicks into place. The problem is it doesn't click very often. So even though the Mariners are currently facing some skepticism, I believe it's too early to count them out. With their chances of making the postseason still at 10%, there's definitely room for optimism. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Keep It Electric. I'll be back next Tuesday to recap this weekend's action and dive into more Mariners baseball. Until then, have a fantastic weekend, keep it electric, and go Mariners!